Outlook is a lot of things. It's email, but it's also calendar and tasks and people, and maybe even more. If our Outlook data is stored on an Exchange server, then we really don't need to know much else. That server is going to be maintained by a competent group of IT professionals somewhere. This is kind of the equivalent of sending and receiving and storing all of our mail directly at the post office. Now, that certainly could happen, but it usually doesn't. Usually, the mail is brought to our home or our office, where it's delivered to a mailbox by the side of the road, or maybe on our doorstep, or even to a basket or a box on our desk. Likewise, we usually don't have to go to the actual post office to send mail either. We understand that for regular mail. But how does all of this happen with email? Where is that mail stored? On our computer, on our network, or some magical place somewhere else? The answer actually depends on the type of email account and some settings that we can also configure. We can explore this more by viewing our account settings in Outlook. We currently have 2 email accounts configured in Outlook. If we take a look at them from our pane on the left-hand side of the window, we can see that one is a pckeys.com account. This is an Exchange account. And down below, we also have a Gmail account. This is an IMAP account. Now, we just happen to know that information, but how else could we find out a little bit more about these accounts? Well, that would be by going to Account Settings. This is accessed by moving to the upper left of the screen and giving a click or a tap on the File tab, and then using the information, we can choose the Account Settings option, and then Account Settings one more time, which opens up a nice little dialog box that lists both of our accounts. If we recall, there are actually 3 types of accounts that we've talked about. We have Exchange, we have IMAP, and we also have POP3. We have not configured a POP3 account, but POP3 email is downloaded from the server at our ISP, for example, to an Outlook PST file. The default name for any PST file in Outlook, as long as we don't change it, is simply outlook.pst. IMAP and HTTP accounts do something a little bit differently. They're kind of a hybrid, so before we go to that, let's talk about Exchange. For Microsoft Exchange accounts, like the one that we have here for pckeys.com, everything stays on the server. If, however, we check the option that says we want to use cached Exchange mode, that also then creates a local copy of our Outlook data, in case we need to work offline or in case we're flying in an airplane or in a hotel. It saves our data offline as well as on the server, and those 2 files will synchronize back and forth as we work. That offline data folder, where all of the information is kept, has an extension of OST, as opposed to the PST for a POP3 account. That leaves us with our last type, which is IMAP and HTTP accounts. And as I said, those are kind of a hybrid. They do save messages on the server by default, but we can then choose to configure them to archive or move items to a local folder. This would be an OST folder as well. So, with all of that data kind of swimming around in your head, what does it really come down to? What we need to know is that we need to be aware of what an Outlook data file is, that's where all of the information is stored, and what it does as it relates to our specific mailboxes, so we know where to find it if we can. That's really all. So once we're into our settings, we can find out this information very easily. By simply clicking on an option, we can see what type of account it is, and if we look down at the bottom of this window, it also gives us more information. It's related to this email account. Now, why does it have to say that? Because remember, the name that we see on top is what we did when we configured it. We don't have to use the email address. This could just be called Michael. So this is the actual email address at the bottom and the folder to which the mail is going to be delivered, which of course by default is the inbox. It also tells us that the data folder is sitting on the C drive. Now, this is a really long path, and I don't want you to try to memorize it. It also happens to be hidden. So the easiest way to find this file and open it up if you need to, or make a copy of it, is to actually go to the Data Files tab on the top of this window. We still see the same 2 accounts listed. If we select the pckeys account, we can actually see the location here. And of course, if it's long, we can pause over it and get a little tooltip. The nice thing is, if we wanted to actually go to this location, there's an option on the top right side of the window that says Open File Location. That way we don't have to copy it, and we certainly don't have to remember how to type the whole thing in. At this point, you might be asking yourself, why do I even need to know this? And the answer is, generally, we don't. The one exception is if we're configuring a new installation of Outlook, and we want to connect it to an old or existing OST file, or even a PST folder, we could do that here by simply clicking on Add, adding the new account, and then if we need to connect to a different data file, we can take care of it all here. But we do have to know where that is, because if we're going to format our hard drive, for example, we might want to back up the offline folder so that we can then reinstall it and have access to all of our old mail. I know, that may seem like a lot of technical information about something we don't ever really need or want to mess with, but it is important for our understanding of exactly where things are being stored in Outlook and how we can access them if we need to, whether it's because we need to work offline or because we've had to reinstall Outlook and want to find our stuff. So, to summarize it all very quickly, if it's an Exchange mailbox, then it might only be kept on the server. If it's going to be a POP3 account or an IMAP account, then it's going to have a PST or an OST folder somewhere, and by opening up our account settings, we can find where that somewhere is. When you're done perusing this information, we can just click Close on the bottom right and let us get back to work in Outlook.